All right, welcome to the Pat Life Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick. I'm going to get us in order here. You can see both of us. Cool. Awesome. All right, today I have with me Mr. Brett Pike, the owner, creator of Classical Learner. And I'm going to let him dive in and explain all that. But how are you doing today, Brett?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. It's a beautiful day and have a lot to look forward to. A lot of the world is upset with everything going on around them, but with everything that happens, there's opportunity.
Yeah.
And you see good things happening all around us, children being pulled out of school and getting away from the beast system,
Mhm.
which, I couldn't think of anything better.
Absolutely, man. And so tell people a little bit about what you've created and kind of what got you there, your background in education and whatnot.
Yeah, well, I came through the public school system,
Mhm.
so I'm a complete idiot. And
I went through the same thing, man.
yeah, came through the public school
Yep.
system. I'm never anything special about me. My teachers said, you know, he was average and I wouldn't sit in my seat and all the things they wouldn't want from a student. And
Right, right.
they called my mother to the principal's office and said, he has to be on ADHD medication.
Oh, jeez.
And my mother looked at them and said, how about I shove it up your ass?
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, I went through the system. I got a bachelor's degree in history education,
Nice.
which I probably didn't take any of that seriously. And um, then I got my master's degree in special education. And after all that, after sitting in a couple of classrooms and teachers' lounges, I said, okay, I don't want to do this. And there's no way in hell I'm allowing my children, when I have them,
Yeah,
to come through the public school system.
right. So that led you then to starting Classical Learner? Is that kind of where that spawned from?
Yeah, yeah. So, I didn't want to teach, but I was passionate about education, passionate about teaching. I had my own awakening to how the world really operated. I came across great thinkers, John Taylor Gatto.
Yep.
Everyone should read Dumbing Us Down, Weapons of Mass Instruction, um, who really pointed out the flaws in the education system.
Hmm.
And they talk about the education system. You could paint it as it's a failure, but if you look at what it's designed to do, it's actually a grand success, because what the education system teaches is to outsource thinking to authority,
Hmm.
to capitulate to authority, to raise your hand to go to the bathroom, and really to take any creativity out of you. So it's going to take that square peg and it's going to jam it in a round hole, and we're going to be a bunch of worker bees. Um, and then Gatto didn't stop there, but you come across people like him who talk about what education really should be. And they get into the history of education and how students used to learn grammar, logic, and rhetoric, the classical trivium. And
Hmm.
they would have this, what I call intellectual self-defense, that just like a computer has virus software, your mind has to have a sort of virus software where information comes in. You say, wait a second, that's not logical. That's inconsistent. I'm
Right.
not going to have cognitive dissonance.
Right.
I'm going to be able to defend myself. Um, and he pointed out things, and he talked about amazing things he did with students where he would basically tell them not to come to class. And he would have them do these projects completely out of school, which if he got caught doing, he would have been fired. But he had 8th grade students basically setting up $40,000 a year businesses.
Wow.
So I kind of ran with that and I created my own educational philosophy. And today I work one-on-one with families, basically helping them create a vision for their children and then
Mhm.
customizing their education so that they can achieve those aims.
That's awesome. And so how long were you a teacher in the normal education system before
Yeah,
this?
so I got my bachelor's degree. I did my student teaching. And then I actually got a job in the early intervention program. So working with the little babies for a couple of years. And that wasn't quite as bad as the public school system, but either way, I had seen enough and decided I wanted to start my own thing, and entrepreneurial mindset, and
I think we're frozen here. One second. We're gonna pause, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah. All right. Sorry about that. We had a little bit of a technical issue here, but you were saying, Brett, that do you remember where you left off? You were
something about the education system.
yes. Oh, you're talking about how John Taylor Gatto was sending his kids out, and you were trying to kind of build your own thing off that. You worked in with younger children. It wasn't the same as the B system, in regards to maybe the programming that we've kind of talked a little bit about in regards to just being kind of worker bees. And then you said from there, that's kind of where it froze.
Yeah, well, you look at the education system, and I always ask parents this. If someone came up to you and said, give me your child for 12 years, and I'm going to educate them. And they said, okay, thank you for this service. How much will it cost? Yada, yada, yada. And you say, all right, well, after 12 years, what will my child be able to do?
Mm-hmm.
And they said to you, well, he won't be able to do much, but he'll be able to apply for the right to take on $100,000 in debt and go learn for an additional 4 years, at the end of which where he probably still won't have any skills. What would you say to that person?
Of course, you'd probably be like, nah, you can go shove it.
I hope so, but that's the choice
Right.
that the majority of people that my parents made. My parents were the best, but they made that choice, and so many parents for generations now have made that choice. And after a while, when you see something is broken to a certain degree,
right,
if you don't alter your path, then I always say, you'll hear conservatives talk about how they want freedom.
Right.
And I say, well, you don't fight against the education system. If you're putting your children into this system, you don't deserve freedom.
Right, exactly. You haven't even really thought that one through, have you? Because that's the thing is we get so compartmentalized in the programming. Essentially, everything is compartmentalized. Of, oh, I want freedom here, but what is what is freedom? Let's look at the whole picture here. And I'm with you 100%. I mean, even at a young age for myself, I would be in school, and it wasn't that. I mean, I enjoyed school because I wanted to learn, but I felt like we were just told to memorize, and that's really what it was. It was always just memorize and take this test and pass, and there you go, you did great. And if you didn't do great because you didn't memorize, it's like, well, then you're failing. It's like, well, within the system, you know what I mean? And that for me I couldn't wrap my mind around how this was actually really teaching me anything, So that was for me like something I learned like early on. So the fact that, someone like yourself who's now taking that initiative going like, all right, I'm aware of what this is. Now I'm helping. How has that been in regards to talking with the parents? It sounds like a lot of the parents may have gone through the same situations as us through the educational system. So are you getting a lot of people like questioning it? Are you getting people who are just gung ho? Are they, how are they coming at it with you when you're doing these consultations?
Yeah, well, I mean, from a macro perspective, the numbers are undeniable in that people are homeschooling now more today than ever. So there's no doubt that there are more people questioning this system, and more importantly, taking action, which another thing I tell people, and I do mean this, I would allow a monkey to educate my child before I sent him to public school.
Right.
Because at least the monkey wouldn't indoctrinate him.
Right.
But from the parents that I work one-on-one with, they typically are already very impressive people. I'm honored to be able to talk to them, and some of the things they tell me they're already doing are amazing. I think I'm going to go in there and tell them, all right, well, you could follow your child's interest, and you can use that to teach them some marketing skills and sales skills. And I'll get them on the line, and they'll tell me they're already doing that. So people are absolutely amazing. But let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you were on an island and there can be whatever infrastructure you want, but you're on this island, it's a different world. And you had to decide, and there was no centralized structure,
Mm-hmm.
how you would educate your children. So no centralized structure. How would you do it?
If I'm on an island, I would first and foremost go into it in the mindset of, all right, I need to know how, like the place I'm at, how is it functioning? Let me look at my surroundings, nature, everything in that regard. I would say, okay, if I'm teaching, what do we need to survive? Those are things that I would start to try to learn in regards to teaching. If there's no infrastructure. Now, if you're talking like in a school system, I would want to make everything hands-on. I want the kids to ask questions. I would want it to be very much, well, what do you think? What do you think this thing is? Because, as you know, what do kids have? Imagination. Like where that takes imagination leads to so many more questions or so much more creativity. And it's like you look at a rock and, all for most adults, because we've been programmed, all you see is a rock. You know what I mean? But that thing is, for them, is this whole other world. It could be so many things. And you realize, oh, wait, maybe there's something kind of there to that. It opens your curiosity. So I don't know if that answered your question, but I would more questions, more, making it an open discussion and just using nature, trying to figure out, okay, well, what's at our disposal? Why is it here? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny you brought up a rock. Earlier today, I was flying a kite on the beach with my boy. He's 3. He's obsessed with kites, so we fly kites all the time. And so we're walking on the beach, and he starts pointing some things out. So I always try to follow his interest, and I'll just attempt to embed what I want him to learn with whatever he's thinking about.
Right.
So he saw a couple things on the beach. He saw a dead jellyfish. So we were talking about the jellyfish, and we were like, I was asking him to describe it. I was like, oh, well, what color is it? And he's thinking about it. I'm like, oh, so it's clear. I'm like, is it soft or is it hard?
Yeah.
So he goes to touch it. I'm like, wait, don't touch it. I go pick up that stick. Like, you want to poke it? He's like, yeah. So he pokes it with the stick and he's playing with the jellyfish. And then there was a washed up, looked like part of a plant. And we were doing the same thing with that.
Right.
And then he came across a rock. You brought up a rock.
Right.
So we were talking about the rock. And I said, Brady, how would you describe this rock to me?
Right.
And it's a tough concept for he's a week over 3. But he was doing his best to describe it. And I would ask questions. I said, well, what color is it? Is it hard or is it soft? Then I'd ask a more abstract question. I say, do you think it's alive? Is it living like you and me?
Yeah.
So you always want to follow their interests. But taking you back to the question, and I kind of touched on it there. If you have a child and you're on this island and you have to educate them, because that's what it's really about.
Right.
I always say start with, you want to follow their interests and use their interest to teach them what you want them to know. So the next question is, and this is the most amazing part to me that the public school system doesn't address, what do you want them to know?
Right.
I don't care about them knowing your crazy scientific theories that you haven't proven and you teach as fact.
Right.
I don't care about them memorizing your narrative history that even your history teachers don't know if it's true or false. They've been told by authority, this is what it is. I want my son knowing math, but even to the degree of which, oh, well, you'll take math 1, math 2, calculus, whatever, on and on and on. What I really want is a picture of who my child's going to be when they're an adult.
Right.
And what I want is for that child to have skills and options. Now, morality, right? We start with morality. I think that's just a given, but skills and options.
Yeah.
So I say, all right, what skills do you want?
Right.
You're going to raise a child. I call it creative excellence. I want them to be able to take whatever is in their imagination and bring it into physical reality.
Of course.
So how do you do that? Art, music, construction, engineering, computer coding. And there are a ton of skills, around that you could learn. People could teach their children. My mother-in-law is great at photography. So I purchased my boy a little camera, and he sees her taking pictures, and I encourage him. I said, "Oh, well, Grandma's taking pictures. Go take pictures with her. Why don't you learn what she's doing?" And he's there and he's trying to learn, because that's a real skill, right? You could start a business if you're good at photography.
Right.
So there's a wide range of skills you could teach, but that's the concept behind it. And then I want that paired with, right, because you want to have value in the real world and be independent, with what I call talent stacks. So
I saw that on your website.
Yeah, it's on my philosophy. But what you want is your child to be able to take that imagination, that creativity. They can bring their imagination into physical reality, but then you want them to be able to turn it into a business so that they're independent. So within a child's education, you follow their interest and you encourage them to do marketing and to sell products and to make products and bring them to a market and to do accounting. And when you put that together and they have that creative excellence, the ability to create what's in their mind, along with those talent stacks with some real world experience, engaging in the free market, to me, that's a vision of, okay, that's who I want my child to be, and where he goes with it. Well, that I can't imagine that, because that's in his mind.
Of course. No, I mean, these are all great points. And, what's interesting is the old version of this, in regards to having an idea, starting the marketing, actually getting product out there, was like an old lemonade stand. I don't know if you ever did that as a kid, but it's, I know you start seeing like, oh, I can do a lemonade stand. I know at least when I was younger, we would do stuff like that. Or, my dad would do, at the time, he was doing part-time construction, painting. So I'd go and help my dad, I'd do little fun side jobs. And it was like such a hands-on. And I mean, at least for myself, I was like, this is great. Still got to do things as a kid, but, it's definitely, you see now, having a younger brother who's in high school, there's not as much of that. At least I haven't seen it. It could be still out there, but it's like these, as you said, these abilities to take the creative mind, allow them to express it, bring it out into fruition. And then, as you said, learning how to hone it and making it a skill that, as you said, where your talent sacks, where it's like, all right, do you know how to, maybe start a small fun business as a kid, learning how to, organize, because these are all life skills that we definitely need. And it always also brings me back to, in high school, you might take like an economics type class, and all they're really teaching, from my experience, is like how to write a checkbook. And it's like, okay, well, how do I now bring that, as you said, bringing real world experiences? How do I know how to deal with this stuff? And it's not that common. And you already know this, I'm just preaching, but I do appreciate the approach that you guys are taking with your business, of just like, all right, we want to actually not just make you ready for the real world, but knowing that your creativity really is what makes the real world, and learning how to hone that. I don't know if you're aware, but I work in film and television. I've created a lot of TV shows and like scripts and things like that. And one of the biggest things for me was, it's like, all right, I have all these ideas. Now what do I do? Like, how do I manifest them? Like, how do I build it from scratch? And that was, for me, I'm fortunate enough that I had skills as a kid of learning how to do these like lemonade stands, small jobs here and there. And it's like, all right, well, where can I start? But not everybody has that, or not anyone. Would you say that you don't see as many parents, other than the ones that you're talking to, who are honing that?
To the contrary, I see so many parents that are honing it.
Oh, good.
Through my time on social media,
Mm-hmm.
putting myself out there as classical learner,
Right.
And just the circles I run in, which are the same circles you run in.
Right.
The community I'm a part of, just the bear community with Owen Benjamin alone.
Right.
There are so many incredibly impressive people.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I see these parents with these skills, and I mean, they're much more valuable than me. One of the most, a sentinel moment in my life was I like my bachelor's degree. I didn't take it seriously, whatever. I went to college to get drunk and chase girls. That's what I did.
Yeah.
But I got into the work world. I went to get my master's degree. I was like, all right, well, let me try to take this seriously now because I'm looking at a career. And I was birthed to two special education. I went to my master's program. And for the first time in my life, I said, all right, I'm going to bear down. I'm going to take this school thing really seriously.
Right.
And I bared down. And 3 years later, I graduated. And I feel douchey saying shit like this, but I'm just for the purpose of it. I graduated with a 4.0 GPA, and I won the award for the top student in my program.
Right.
And I remember looking around and thinking, I don't have any fucking skills. What is this?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I knew then, I said, okay, well, this system, there's problems with it. There's problems with it. It's not right. And I worked with, talk about amazing parents. I worked with a parent a couple of weeks ago who knowledgeable about cars, and his son, 8 years old, very interested in cars, his whole life does the mechanical stuff with him. I said, okay, well, does he change the oil? He goes, oh, well, he's seen it. I said, okay, well, he's interested in cars. Next time you change the oil, sit down with him and change the oil. Well, he did this the next day, and he showed him how to change the oil, and his son did it. This is what I told him. I said, so he likes cars. He wants to do this. So that's his intrinsic motivation. He's intrinsically motivated by, he loves fixing up cars. His dad's always bought him all the little cars, toy cars. I said, all right, well, now he could fix up a real car, but here's what I want you to do. We're going to pair it with extrinsic motivation. And this is where sometimes people look at me sideways, like, what is this guy talking about? But this is the mindset. This is the talent stacks we create in children. So I said, okay, make some flyers with him, sit down, ask him if he wants to do it, but he will. Make some flyers. And he did this. And they made these flyers and they passed them out just to the neighbors' houses. And the flyers just said that whatever, oil change.
Right.
And since then, I've spoken to the father, and the child, this 8-year-old, has been paid to do a neighbor's oil change.
That's awesome. That's
what an education is.
Well, then it's fascinating, because when you start to realize how much kids are sponges. I mean, your son's 3, my son's a little over 1.5 now. And it's just how quickly they pick up on things, and especially at an 8-year-old level, right? And it's something, as you said, they're so intrinsically motivated by, they're ready to take in any information in the, a lot of it being so aesthetically, you're hands-on, right? So I can only imagine these conversations like this one, you see parents almost flabbergasted of I knew my kid was interested, but I didn't realize they were this into it. I can only imagine, because it seems like a lot of parents kind of just give that off to somebody else. And then when they get home, it's how was school? And it's good. Did you learn anything? No. Yeah. My little brother does it all the time. When he come home. And so it's but it's just, that's the thing, is his kids want to get out. They want to do stuff. Did he say anything about how his kid responded to taking that responsibility on? Did he say that he was jumping with joy or anything like that?
I'm looking forward to a good follow-up conversation. The details I know is they did pursue it, and they've started doing this, and I'm sure a lot went into the dad helping and all of that, but it's the idea behind it.
Yeah, of course.
There's a article on Classical Learner on my blog about, I believe she was 9 at the time, maybe 9 or 10. This amazing girl who she bought Christmas elves. She bought Christmas elves, and she just started customizing them. Her mother had done that with shirts. She had the printing materials printed on shirts. Well, we got together and we decided, following her interest, she would print names on elves. And she printed these names on Christmas elves and started selling them at the school, and they started going like hotcakes. She did so well. Then her mother, who just followed along with it, suggested to her, oh, well, your cousin is a soldier. He was stationed overseas. So she sent one to her cousin overseas. Well, then his barracks mates thought they were cool and he mentioned that they wanted them. So she made them for his barracks mates and sent them for free to these veterans overseas. And then her mother suggested to her, okay, well, you did this. Why don't you write a letter to a local newspaper? So she wrote a letter to a local newspaper. And sure enough, they contacted her. And you could see it on my blog. There is
Yeah.
a full page front cover spread of this 9-year-old girl about what she did with these elves.
That's amazing. And how long ago was this exactly? I'll look at the post, but how long ago did she do?
Pre-COVID, so I'm thinking probably 18 months ago, maybe.
Wow. And have you
Oh, you're
followed
looking at the
up?
post? Yeah. Yeah,
Have you
she's
followed up with how is she still doing it or?
on and off, on and off.
Okay.
It's a seasonal thing for her, but it's, I mean, to think about at that age to do that,
Of course.
what is she going to do at
Right.
20? What is, right? I mean,
Absolutely. Well, because what is it doing ultimately, right? Is it's like anything else that you're learning for a lot of us later in life of like, all right, I've been, kind of pampered through this whole process, maybe not necessarily getting a ton out of it, but then when real life lessons come about, it's like, well, how are we usually learning? It's like, oh, you're kind of learning through failure, right? You have to make mistakes. You have to have these obstacles in order to learn a lesson from it, and it seems when you see kids, you're learning at such a young age, but you have the support. If you have strong, nuclear family of parents to be there to actually kind of facilitate that, it's like, okay, you're not making the mistakes alone, but you're experiencing the mistakes or, failures or hardships or problems that may come about. But we can be here together to go, okay, well, what's our next move? What would you do next? What do you think is a good idea? Or, hey, maybe let's try this one instead. You know what I mean? Because it's like, for example, it's like, oh, my cousin wants it. Well, how do I get it there? I've never maybe mailed anything on my own, right? It's like, okay, this is an obstacle. Or you get grown adults who still don't know how to go and like fill out like
right, right.
mailing. And it's as much as people can think that's rude, it's just the truth. You know what I mean? It's like you can ask people like how many people know where just like how to like to open the hood of their car, not even fix a car, just open the hood. So it's like these things that I think, well, I know what you're doing and just kind of helping more parents or having those conversations with more parents who are already doing that. It's just creating that frequency of like, all right, let's be doers here. Let's teach our children to be doers. So, I mean, with that all being said, are you seeing a growth? I know you said you're seeing a growth in homeschooling, but with Classical Learner, are you seeing more parents, more communities reaching out to you?
I mean, I don't think I see a crazy amount of people, but the families I've worked with, I've had a lot of success with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I guess I'm a small business, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
not something that's really scaled.
Right.
But in terms of what I'm seeing, yeah, I mean, I've worked with a lot of families now that we had these big successes with. And, keep in mind when we're doing things like that, as parents, our job is to guide and challenge. So,
Mm-hmm.
yes, we have that 8-year-old running an oil business, but really his father's just guiding him and challenging him. And a lot of the way is going to be involved in that, just like the little girl who ran her elf business, right? Her mother was a real driver in that,
Of
right?
course.
Like those little things you said, like, well, how do I mail something overseas? Well, her mother, she actually went with that little girl to her employer, to the mother's employer, and said, this is what my daughter's doing. They went together, and we want to ship these elves overseas. And then that was, it's a charitable thing for veterans. So the mother's employer actually funded the shipping of those elves overseas.
Awesome.
So whereas that's very complex, and you say, well, a 9-year-old girl can't do that. Well, that 9-year-old girl through experience is learning how you can do things.
Absolutely.
Um,
But think about what it's doing just at a neurological level, the amount of synapses that you start to create, that neuroplasticity that occurs with creating these new signals. And it's not looking at it as, you know, like, oh, I don't know what to do. I don't have creativity. It's like, all right, I see all these different things in front of me. I've been through this, as we said, I've been through this ringer. Now let's start creating. Oh, well, what's next? Oh, through my experience, we have to get this somewhere. We can get this somewhere. We can have people buy it. Oh, don't worry, I know how. Maybe the only way they know in the moment is go to your mom's employer. But it's like, if it's not him, it's like, okay, is there someone else we can go to? You know what I mean? And I think that's what's so cool to see. From, as you said, even though it's not a ton of or you said you had a good amount of families, but it's you're saying you're small. It's like, it's those important moments, because like anything else, right? People will talk. They'll want to be like, hey, I was talking with this homeschooling curriculum, this gentleman, and this is one thing that he brought to my attention. And maybe if people aren't coming, they're starting to think, those wheels start to turn for parents. The creativity for the parents starts to open up. I can only imagine that's maybe something that you have experience with, parents coming to you with some creative ideas that maybe they hadn't before.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the elf example, what the mother did,
Mhm.
I mean, yes, I'm a part of that, but what the mother did is
Right,
phenomenal, right? I'm just kind of
right,
planting seeds, and I try to help parents create a vision.
right,
Um, and, to me, I've been very successful, but I do like to talk about how I am a small business and I only have so much experience in doing what I've done.
right,
Because sometimes I think I project myself out to the world. They say, oh, this guy has it all figured out. I'm a guy like everyone else. I'm a parent. I've had some successes with a small business. Um, but that's one of the things I think about a lot. Like, I kind of project myself out like, oh man, this guy really has it together. He had his house
right,
and he sold his home, and now he's getting a homestead in North Carolina and he's running a business. Yeah,
right,
I'm doing all those things, but I don't know a damn thing about
right,
about homesteading. I don't know a damn thing about building or
right.
farming, but I'm going to try all that. And so far, I ran a successful little small business, but I don't know about, I haven't scaled it to something of
Right.
major proportions.
But this is the key takeaway, and I think having, to whatever capacity, having parents taking the reins of just being there to teach kids as much as possible. What it's also learning is, from the parent standpoint, is like anything else. It's like anything else. It's going to take small steps. You're not going to have it all figured, every little piece figured out. It's like, oh, we're going to build something today. Maybe you're not a great builder, but it's like, I'm going to learn with you, right? And I think that's an important key that, I mean, at least that I'm trying to take with my son, is like, all right, he's interested. We go outside. He loves airplanes. It's like, I at times I've tried to build him like a cardboard airplane, and it's like then getting interested of like, okay, well, what's interesting about that, and then asking questions for yourself, like, how does it move? How does it go? Could we make a small one? Like, what? It's just like you as the parents start to get creative, and you want to now go, all right, how can I be at a level with them, as you said, but then it's like also guiding them. It's like, if this is something they're passionate about, not being like, oh, we'll just give you off to somebody else. It's like, sure, we might put you in fun camps with other kids so you're learning together. Great. But it's also a matter of like, but being with your child too. So it's like, the experiences they're going through, or at least you can kind of have some sort of, relationship with them. So it's not like, oh, I did all these things. You're like, oh, that's great, cool, whatever. It's like, oh, did you build that one thing again? Did that one part that you were looking at, was it working? Or did what was the soil like? Was it rich? So it's like, there's that type of interaction that it sounds like a lot of parents are doing. But, I think with, it being that parents are busy, and sometimes parents don't necessarily want to be around their kids, maybe because they need a moment to themselves, or they're just constantly like, I can't be around my kid. Or some parents who, they're like, I just want to be away, like parents who travel, and like you'll see them leave their kids home. It's like, great, maybe that's your life, and if that works for you, but it's like, if you want to see your kids thrive, it's like, do you know what's going on in their life? Do you even know what they're interested in? And I know I'm kind of going on random tangents here, but I think even going back to your point of like, hey, you don't know how to necessarily homestead this and that, but it's like, but your son, or your maybe more soon kids will see, all right, dad's trying to figure this out. He's learning just like I'm learning. And what are you learning? What is your child learning just by watching that and being an observer of that, right?
Yeah, well, one of the best things we can do as a parent is to teach our children what we know,
Right.
which, like when I grew up, my father could fix anything, but they were so in the mindset that, no, Brett, this is what you do. You go to school.
Right.
They didn't even teach me that stuff. And now I look back, I'm like, that's the stuff I
Mhm.
really want. That's the stuff I'm teaching myself right now.
Right.
That's the stuff I really want to know. And I'm, eager to dive into.
Right.
Um, so we have to teach our children what we know. Like, you have the plane example. Right now, your boy is 18 months.
It's yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, so many things you could do, but like you can get just little basic planes that are easy to put together. Like let me see.
Oh, that's cool.
There you go. Like, look at this.
Yeah. Yeah.
18 months. So this is a little baby, right? So we're keeping it simple, but this is one of the things I do with my son. So we just pull out the parts. Brady, where does this go?
Yeah.
He's interested in it. I don't know.
Right.
But eventually he's there. He doesn't quite have to find motor skills, but I help him pull it through.
Right.
Right. And you do that. You build the plane. He likes to tie strings around them
Yeah.
and fly them. But one of the things you have a skill set in is media, you said. So as your boy's ready, you can start to make short videos. So you put the planes together, you make short videos, and you want to start to teach him the skills of videography, so that when he's 12, he has the skills that you have when you're 30.
Right.
And then who knows what he'll want to do with it. But you cultivate, you plant that seed, you cultivate that skill, because that's something that I would call creative excellence. That's within that range of skills we want our children to know.
Right.
And then, if you told me he was 8 years old, I'd say, all right, well, go on Amazon or whatever and look up STEM toys for planes. And I would say actually work with him to build a plane, because I'm sure you can, that flies. And then there's so much you can do with it. You can do videography type things with it. I mean, you could even do some business type things with it. You could put on a show, put on an airplane show, whatever it might be. But there's so many different directions you can take that talent. Whereas if they were sitting in a school in a classroom or doing something traditional, like people ask me about curriculums.
Yeah.
Like I don't even, I mean, I do a lot of curriculum research because parents ask me all the time. Oh, Brett, what curriculum should I get? Okay, I pull up my list. I'm like, well, this curriculum has these strengths, that strength based on my research, yada yada yada. But what I do with my own son, I don't care about curriculum. He's 3. Yeah, I'll do a curriculum just to have a baseline of, you want to have some textbooks and basic stuff you could work with.
Of course.
But I mean, to me, it's you follow their interest, embed what you want them to learn, have good conversations, like you said, and really encourage them to we're constantly working, constantly. Creative excellence, the ability to create, and talent stacks. And I mean, I'm a firm believer in my stuff, but watch my boy when he's 15, because the things he's going to be able to do will be incredible. And it'll be the same for a parent like you or anyone else who does this stuff. There's just so many parents have a framework in their mind of this is how you educate a person. And to me, no, you have to tear that whole framework down.
Right.
How would you educate? All back to it. If you're on that island, how do you educate that child? And who do you want him to be? What skills do you want him to have?
Absolutely, man. No, I mean, even just some of those ideas that you brought to my attention, it was, it's like, wow, that's actually, yeah, we can definitely do something like that. And it is fascinating. He likes to, we don't, we're very mindful of how much, TV's watching, and we let him watch a little like Baby Einstein, and then home videos of like just us filming him. He enjoys watching those. So being able to maybe do some of those things, right? Of like filming, like creating the airplanes, flying them around, filming them, and letting him watch that, that already for me, I'm like, oh, light bulb, creativity, let's do this, which is great, man. And I think that's fascinating. And it's right up the alley. Like he'll see an airplane in a book and he just goes, like he just loves watching. He always is looking up when we're outside. He sees him. He's always like, pointing to it. So it's cool to see, just like you said, just start going, all right, well, what are your strengths as a parent? And dude, that's awesome, man. I'm like ready to like go start doing this. Good stuff, man. But dude, let's kind of shift gears a little bit. I know you've put together some books, some children's books. So do you want to maybe just kind of run with that and just how you came to create these? You know, what was your process in doing that, and kind of where they're at now?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I get concerned about, which I know a lot of people do, is like you brought up, your child watches some YouTube videos or shows sometimes too. I try to keep my boy away from it as
Mhm.
much as I can, but it's unavoidable. I mean, some
Right.
people really do avoid it completely. God bless them,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's very hard to avoid completely. So like, yeah,
Right.
my boy watches some of that stuff, and I try to steer him toward like kite videos on YouTube, which
Right.
he loves watching kite. They're just children flying kites. Um, but you
Right.
know, it's tough to do.
Yeah.
So one of my big concerns is content. So um, I wanted to have content for my boy that as he grows up, I could kind of start to use as entertainment, but teach him the way the world really works, kind of reflect reality back into him through entertainment. And, I was just sitting around one day and a thought came into my mind. I was like, all right, well, I could write a book. Um, that's a long story too. I knew I could write and publish a book. I knew how to do that because of creative excellence. I, I had written a book um, about the pharmaceutical industry,
Yeah.
and there was nothing like it on the market.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I got to the point where I was going to publish it. I don't care. Anyone wants to call me a bitch, whatever.
Right.
I looked at it and I looked at what was going on in the world and I spiked it. I wrote the
Uh,
whole book. I got it edited, formatted, cover, everything ready to go, and I spiked it.
what was your reason?
I thought long and hard about it, and it was the type of book that bringing the heat to my wife and possibly my children wasn't fair to them. So
Right.
I made a decision. But
Right.
people call me a bitch. It is what it is. I'm honest about it. So
Dude, I mean, here's the thing, man. Like you said, you're looking out for a family, dude. So, I mean, sometimes you gotta, it's a time and place.
I did that. But anyway, I knew how to the book process now. That which goes back to how you educate children, their experience. So I had an idea, and in like one night, I wrote a children's book, which was simple. It was my first book. It was Good Bears Always Tell the Truth,
It's awesome.
which very simple message, but basically it's about good bears telling the truth
Mm,
and the consequences of what happens when you do lie. Because the animals in the book that end up telling a lie, um, they find themselves in a very bad place. And they essentially, I mean, it's subtle. For a children, it just looks like, oh, don't lie, but you could actually tell, oh, they get blackmailed,
right, right.
blackmailed. So I made that one, and I was like, all right, well, I think I'm onto something here. So then I started making more complex books. The Right to Bear Arms, The Bear from Jekyll Island,
Yeah, no.
Operation Mockingbird.
Yeah.
And those books are really designed to teach the mechanisms by which the government and corporations
Right.
and media control society and
Right.
manipulate people into giving up their rights.
Right.
So I try to use these books as a framework almost, so that children could, as they grow up and these difficult concepts start to enter into their world, they look back at that book and go, oh, that book had more meaning. And
Right.
now I have this framework, right? This
Right.
foundation in which I could build an understanding of the world,
Right.
which people don't realize. But one of the reasons I'm so against, Lucy, are you kidding me? My dog going crazy in the background.
Yeah. Yeah. It's okay.
One, one of the reasons I'm so against children watching children's shows is it seems subtle, but they're actually
they're doing the same.
Especially once I started writing, I see how writers do this.
Right.
But they're trying to create a framework for your child so that they misunderstand the world.
Right. I mean, you're seeing it. It's in everything, right? It's everything that's out there, regardless of what your beliefs are. There's always messages that are coming across. I'm with you on that. Yeah.
I mean, did you read the books?
Your books specifically?
Yes.
I saw the Jekyll Island one. I did, and then I listened to the Operation Mockingbird one.
Good girl.
That's a cute dog. What's your dog's name?
Lucy.
Hello.
Mwah. Why are you ripping up that box back there, man? Stop ripping up boxes while I'm talking.
Yeah, no, I completely jumped in on you, but you're saying obviously they're already doing that in these TV shows and movies as well.
Yeah, so I wanted to create that framework, and so far, just one book is built off of the other, and obviously they're very inspired by the bear community,
Right.
the work that Owen Benjamin does. In the most recent book, the star of the book is Red Rooster, right?
Right.
We all know who that's based off of.
Of course.
And as Red Pill Rooster they were gracious enough to give me the blessing to do that. God bless them. They're doing great work.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the most recent book, Operation Mockingbird, Red Rooster was a member of the corporate press.
Right.
And that was his job. He would report the morning news with daily cockadoodle doos.
Yeah.
And
I love it.
And lately it felt that there was a crime. It was a bear every time.
Mm-hmm.
So Red Rooster started stalking the bears. And while he was doing that, he came across Sherlock Bear.
Right.
Who is obviously a play on both Sherlock Holmes and Shylock Holmes.
Of course.
Who was a character of Owen Benjamin.
Yeah.
And Red Rooster comes across Shylock Bear, who offers him the red berries or the blueberries.
Right.
And Red Rooster, obviously, he takes the red berries.
Mm-hmm.
And Sherlock Bear shows him his evidence board. And he's like, look at all these things Charisma Cat has been doing. He shows him a false flag attack, which took place in a previous book.
Right.
And he shows him the bakers, how they're really vampires trying to suck on the blood of your debt.
Yeah, right.
And a shadowy spider, which I don't even bring up what it is. They could figure it out later. But obviously the CIA, it's that shadowy. I don't even have to bring up what it is. Just put the shadowy spider in there and just figure it out.
Yeah, of course. That's awesome.
Red Rooster, he wakes up and he decides he wants to wake up the farm. So he convenes the farm to the church committee.
Right.
Which is obviously a play on the Congressional Church Committee.
Right.
Which exposed Operation Mockingbird.
Right, of course.
And, he gets in front of the church and he's telling all the other animals, this is what's happening. That's what's happening. Don't you see? And the animals are like, oh, yeah. And then Red Rooster tries to go to work the next day. And the news had already reported that he's a quack. The headline was Quack-a-doodle-doo.
Yeah.
And he tries to go to work, but Charisma Cat, who's the archetypal representation of the controllers, she had him fired. So the security guard was waiting there, and he was like, oh, man. And Red Rooster walks out of there, and all the animals forgot what he had told them, except for the bears. But every morning, with love and with care, Red Rooster wakes up to wake up the farm. He cock-a-doodle-doos, so.
That's awesome. Well,
felt pretty good about that one.
No, it's dude, man. I think it's a great one, man. I want to definitely once we get with our move, I'll definitely be getting those, man, because I think it is interesting, not only supporting, but it's also just seeing, like you said, that these are already things that are out there. They're in every book. There's already messages always getting across. So what is the message that you want your children, you want to be putting out there? Like you said, telling the truth. Knowing how the system works, look out for the people that are trying to, do the right thing, speaking truth, being kind, being courteous, gentle, whatever the case is. And I think what's also cool about what you're doing is you're narrating, you're having people narrate it. So there's that that archive now, not just of the book itself, but, voices now coming into it, people who are supporting it and bringing life to it in that regard too, which is awesome, man. And how was that whole process getting everybody on board to help out?
Yeah, well, I mean, Anchor Bear is a freaking legend.
Yeah, yeah. Dude,
I mean, he is
he just
the
fire
content he puts
stuff.
out now, like every month, is just.
Yeah.
But if I recall correctly, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but if I recall correctly, I think he, I think he inboxed me that he would do the voices. So I was like,
Yeah.
hell yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That was it. I sent him the script and he just crushed. He did the
Yeah, no, it's
music.
really well done. Really well done. So, and then
He
who'd you have draw it?
Yeah, so my illustrator is Masha Noir,
Hmm.
who she lives in Russia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's real based. When I first got started, I originally contacted Hand Drum Bear
Hmm.
to see if she wanted to do it. But I guess she had just given birth,
Oh, wow.
so she said she passed on it. So I was like, all right, I need an illustrator. So I randomly found Masha on the internet. I searched up and down for someone whose illustrations I liked. Started working with her, and it must be a Russian thing. They get American corruption, because I
Hmm.
send her these scripts and she'll just write me back. Yes, but we should add this and this. You get the whole thing.
Yeah, you're like, I'm learning new things from you. How do you know so much? Like, we get the information here. Don't worry.
He's like, yes, Putin bent over bankers. Yes, we know. You're
We
controlled
understand.
by bankers.
Yeah, that's so funny, man. But dude, that's awesome. But what I think for me, and the reason why I wanted to reach out and talk to you and just kind of get to pick your mind and just start this process is just that is you as the parent are allowing creativity back into your life. Or at least it's been there for a long time. But you said a pivotal moment is when you're like, all right, I'm gonna start taking school serious. Right. And I think what happens is we see a generation now where you get people go through the system, they get the job, they get the cush life. But then, I was in New York City for a long time. What do you see? People just partying, drinking, going to work, partying, drinking, going to work. And they're doing a lot of this into their 30s. And it's like, and I've trained in my personal training business. You sometimes talk to these people and they go, man, I don't have time for creativity. There's things I wish I could do, but I have to work. And it's like their mindset is just staying on that hamster wheel and not allowing creativity. And what's interesting is with my job is trying to sometimes use, movement, physical activity to bring that creativity back out of people. But what's cool with what you're doing is bringing it in a creative way. And I guess mine is too, but if you know how to do it as an adult, you can then, as you said, pass that on to your children, or they can they can be observers of what you're doing. And I think that's an important piece is when you have children who look at the parents as their role models of how do I need to be in this world, in this realm? How do I need to react? How do I need to respond? What am I going to allow myself to do? What am I going to keep myself from doing? Well, let me see what my parents are doing. And, that question of like, why are so many kids, retaliate against their parents? It's like, is it because there's that disconnect of parents aren't really in their life? It's just sending them off to school and not really being invested in what they're doing. Is that a part of it? I can't speak 100%, but I feel that's pretty common as you see a lot of kids in in the schooling system, the public schooling system. And, it's with people that, maybe there's people with hopes to help their children, but it's not the same as a parent. You know what I mean? It's never the same.
Yeah, it reminds me of that meme. I love it. It's the little boy. He goes up to his father, his dad, and the father's the word box. Not right now. And he's a little bit older, and he goes up to his father, his dad.
Yeah, yeah.
Not right now. And he's a little bit older, and he goes to his father, his dad. Not right now. And then the fourth box is the son wearing all black clothes and a hammer and sickle. Because he's a communist now. He's been indoctrinated. And the father goes, son. And the son just looks at him and goes, not right now.
Right. Yeah. It's powerful, man. Dude, these
Hmm.
the memes that we're seeing that people put out there, dude, it's crazy how people can use a picture and a few words to get a point across. It's such a powerful. And cause I remember seeing that going like, oh, dude, that's powerful, man. And you start even seeing, not to go too far off on a tangent, but you also see with statistically with the increase of the divorce rate, now you not only have maybe kids who are in an education system, but now they only have maybe one parent around. You know what I mean? It's like start thinking about, the blocks that are stacking up in a direction where you really are putting your kids in a place where someone else is raising them for 12 years. You know what I mean? And it's unfortunate that parents are going through, a lot of them are going through their own types of divorces. And it's like, you know, you get parents who then go, especially with younger children, it's like, oh, it's not your guys' fault. It's not your fault. But now these kids are like, well, I wasn't here, like I didn't, we were always at school or we were always out and about, we maybe there's something we could have done different. Like, right. You see all these kids who, then retaliate because they're like, well, we were getting our parents' attention then, now we don't have like a nuclear family anymore for a lot of these kids. And then it's like, all right, how are we going to get your attention now? Right. Is there a correlation?
Yeah, I mean that's like you brought up the drinking culture,
Right.
and it really all ties in. When I grew up, drinking was if you didn't drink, you were weird. So like my family, everyone's always, and I love my family. Everyone's always drunk. I was 12 years old. I was the youngest of four children, and I was drinking.
Yeah.
That was nice. My parents would say, "Don't drink," and they would punish me. Mom and Dad, if you're out there, I love you. I'm not criticizing you. You crushed. All right, we all miss things. But I was 12 years old. I would get drunk all the time. They'd catch me. They'd punish me. I wouldn't care. I'd keep getting drunk because I'd be like, well, mom's drunk and dad's drunk and Billy's drunk and Eric is drunk and Stacy's drunk and they're all drunk.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be drunk. Yes. So I grew up doing that. And I remember thinking, because by the time I became a father, I had gone through a lot of the transfer on the way to being the person you see in front of you today, which I hope you and other people find to be relatively impressive. But
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude.
I'm more of this person because I had gone through college, and like I said, I was in college to get drunk
Right.
and to hook up with girls. That is why I was there. That's all I cared about. As an idiot. So
That's
I
the
went.
majority of kids now. I mean, it really is no different.
But
Most kids are,
that was the norm. That's what that's what I saw. That's what my family did. That's what everyone around me did. That's what I was going to do. But by the time my son was born, I had started to change. I found God.
Mhm.
Not that I was like this horrible immoral person. I wasn't. I had a good heart, but it's just there's something about true morality.
Absolutely.
Found God and really start to think about these things. I remember I was like, I don't want my son, if I understood culture, right? Because I was already becoming classical learner. I was like, I can't have my son growing up in that culture because what I say won't matter. Children learn from what you do, not from what you say.
Right.
So I started cutting out the drinking a little bit when he was born, got pretty good at it. And then I've gotten so far with it that March 7th this year marks 1 year since my last drink.
That's awesome, man. That's a huge accomplishment. And that's beautiful, man. And I really, I applaud you because like you said, when you take habits, I mean, the reason I say this all the time with my job, and even myself included, when you get habits that have been with you for so long that they become your way of coping or your way of surviving or your way of, whatever the case is, to be able to have things in your life, and the big one is, finding yourself back with God and going, hey, man, I'm not alone in this. But it is still a very challenging road. So for anybody, like, I mean, I'm in the same boat. I haven't, I was in a huge partier or drinker. Like I enjoyed going out, having some beers and doing that stuff. But same thing. I was just like, can't be, I don't feel comfortable, being with my son all day. The idea of drinking, gosh forbid something happens. Like Owen says, like if something happens, I want to be ready. I want to be prepared. And it's like then taking that, and that was easy for me. It's crazy. Like that was easy for me to actually stop drinking. But someone like yourself, like you said, that was the culture that was your norm, you know, for something like your son being born to be so powerful. That's great. And, he's 3 now, but with those first 2 years, it sounded like you were still like making active moves in the right direction to go, okay, this was a part of my life, but it's not me,
That's children will learn from what we do.
Right.
And like one of the biggest challenges that I have ahead of me as a father, and this is why culture is everything.
Mm-hmm.
It starts with your in-home culture. It's everything. I have to model what I'm supposed to be,
Right.
which is why I work very hard. I try to be the best husband I can be. I try to lead my family. I am very present with my son. When my daughter's born in May, I'll be very present their whole lives. I try to do all the right things. I try not to drink. I try to be sober. Try to model everything I want them to be, because I know that, and I, like one of the things I know I'm doing wrong, and I still haven't broke it, is my son sees me on that phone looking at it all the time. And he's 3 now, but I know he's going to be 7, 8. Dad, I want a phone. No.
Yeah, right.
So,
yeah.
But with culture, like one of the things I'm really weighing in, and like how, it's why I love the bear community. It's why, like I don't have a church I go to right now, but when I go to Carolina, there's a church. I want to find the right church. I want to find the right homeschool groups, because just like children being in that public school culture where there's that hookup culture, how can I get my son to not participate in that gross culture, that hookup culture, and to embrace traditional life? Because I want him to be a virgin until he gets married. I want him to marry young and have a big family and do things differently. But the best way to do that is culture. And that's, to me, the biggest challenge for parents. Like I know my in-home culture I could fix. It's pretty damn good right now, my in-home culture.
Right.
Shit, it better be.
Right.
But the thing I grapple most with is, all right, the surrounding culture,
right,
how do I make sure the right people are in his life, his friends, his influences, what he sees? Because otherwise, I mean, you see it with some of these children. It's like they're 8 years old, and you can look at them and like, man, if these parents don't change something, they're in trouble when this child's 13.
It's true. It's so true. I could say that from my firsthand experience. When I was younger, like in my teens, I was a lifeguard at a country club. My girlfriend at the time, her dad was like the manager, so I got a job pretty easy. But it was interesting when you watch these kids, because right, you're kind of the authority, which they didn't really listen to you, but you're watching kids and you're watching parents and you're seeing the interactions day in and day out. And one of the things that you start to notice is you start to see these kids with the reactions to their parents, with parents being like, just go. And, I was doing it for 5, 6 years. So, right, I'd see kids who were 8, 9, and then by the time I was older and like, they were like 13, 14, you're like, oh my gosh, you see the molding of that parent-child relationship, and you see them in the way they're walking and the way they're talking to their parents and the way they treat you as like us as like the lifeguards. And it was, for me, what exactly you're saying, it dawned on me is like, it's so prevalent and it's so in your face when you see that relationship at that critical 7, 8, 9 years old to what, their teenage years may or may not look like just by watching them with their parents. And it wasn't just one family. Like I would see this with multiple families, so it was for me kind of like I was doing my own research, like not even realizing that I was doing like a little bit of like observation and, then coming up with the hypothesis conclusion, like, but yeah, man. So you're saying that with this place in North Carolina, do you have anyone there that you guys are looking for community already? I know you said you're looking for a church, but do you know anyone else that's down there that kind of have some of those same views?
Well, that's the thing. I don't to this point, but because culture is so important to me, I'm going to make it a priority to put myself in the right places, have interactions with the right people. The bear community is a big part of that. Church is a big part of that. Knowing my neighbors is a big part of that. One of the activities I did with my son this past summer, in the midst of a global pandemic, where people were afraid to hug their mother,
Right, right.
my son and I planted 50 lettuce seeds.
Oh, wow.
And it took about a week. They grew, and he was 2 years old, but he did it with me. So
Right.
we planted these seeds and we watered them and they grew. And a week later, we had these 50 lettuce seeds in these containers. And what we did was I took my son, and actually my niece came with us, and we went door to door and we knocked on doors and we gave all of our neighbors lettuce. And I had a good laugh because at a time where the media would have told you that, oh my God, everyone's afraid of everyone, no one wants to see anyone. The smiles and reactions, a lot of these neighbors I didn't even know.
Right.
Oh my God, thank you. This is so considerate, blah, blah, blah. The reactions were the opposite of what the media would project. And that's the type of thing I want to bring to North Carolina. And that's the type of thing, talk about like culture, what you want your son to see. My car was dead at the time. And one of my neighbors, so I didn't really know, I knew him a little bit, but I didn't really know him. We gave him this lettuce, and so shooting shit, and it's like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And he was actually working on his car. As he did, I was like, oh yeah, I think I have to replace the battery. My car won't start. So he's like, no, you don't got to replace your battery. I'm like, oh no? He's like, I'll be over in 30 minutes. Okay. Comes over in 30 minutes. He had a car battery charger, hooked it up, plugged it into my house. He said, let this sit for 8 to 12 hours. Okay. 8 to 12 hours later, turn my car on. So I grew lettuce, gave it to my neighbor with my son. My neighbor comes to my house, so I didn't even know this guy, fixes my car, so saves me, what's a battery, $300-400?
Right.
Like that. Saves me $300-400 because I planted a seed of lettuce.
Right.
So like that's the type of thing, knowing your neighbors is important, but you got to make an effort.
Right.
And then biblically speaking, like I want my son to see that you have to do on to your neighbor, right? This is the morality I want him to grow up with, but all these things, this in-home culture, that's the effort it takes.
Yeah, man, dude, I remember reading that in the Beartariatimes, and I just remember going like, this is beautiful, man. And it just goes to show you, truly, when you're doing something out of the kindness of your heart, teaching life lessons for your children, right? And more than that,
that's the shit I mean, where I'm like, I project myself. Everyone's like, this guy has it figured out, like I did that. And I write this article, and they're like, "Man, classical learner." Sometimes I'm like, "All right, guys, all right."
but
You're the guy here, and I don't.
But this is the thing, though, man. It is, and this is something I've been saying when I've talked to the Bears that have come on here, and just through other conversations, is when you're around a bunch of people who are truly doers, they're putting themselves out there, they're taking their skills, they're honing those in. They're taking on new skills. They're willing to make mistakes. They're willing to but they're doing it from, like you said, a place of morality, doing it from the place of the kindness of their hearts, trying to just be the best people they can be. Obviously, a lot of them being, very, driven by, God, and making sure they're doing right in that regard, which is beautiful in itself. Is you start to then go, yeah, I can do that too. Why aren't I doing that if you haven't? And what does it do? It's a self-reflection. In my experiences, a lot of people today taking time for self-reflection is a scary thing for people. It forces you to have to look in. A lot of people don't want to look in. So
Yep.
this is why I say, it's not to toot your horn, but it really is a beautiful thing when you go, hey, disregard, the children for a sec, but as a human being, from one man or woman to another, going, I'm going to do something kind. Don't have to do anything for me. This is just me trying to do the right thing, whatever that may be. And obviously now when you have a child, it's like, I just want you to learn this too. Because as a parent, how great does it feel when you can start bringing those things, those ideas, that type of responsibility to your child's life, of going, you can be the best person you could possibly be. Here's one way to do it. And then obviously out of it, it's like someone does something kind, and it's generally going, oh, this is literally what pay it forward is. And when you're not going into it of like, oh, well, he'll do this for me, he'll do that. And I'm with you, man. I do stuff like that here. I mean, our in the complex, the apartment complex we're in, our super great guy, I do physical fitness. He's had some issues with his neck, shoulders. So I took the time to just kind of take him through some workouts and different things to see what was going on, see what helped. And he took the time not just to help us fix our brakes, but like show me how to do it. I was like, I would like to learn. Please teach me. And so we did it together, and he was showing me and explaining our car better. So I kind of I don't know every in and out about it, but it's like, I know what I'm looking at. I can be like, this is this, that's this. And it's just by doing something kind. And I was like, can I give you something? He's like, no, dude, just thank you for what you've done already. I appreciate that. And that's really what life is, right? And talking about obviously the currency and the financial system is, if things go the way it appears they are, it's like, okay, do you have community? Do you have a skill? Do you know how to do, trade? Because these are important.
Let's get into that in one second. I'm excited to talk about. Let me just let her
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Freaking whiner, man.
I honestly can't even hear it, to be honest.
uh,
Yeah.
yeah, that's like, all right. So that's where like really, like when I talk about culture being important, right? As a
Right.
parent, and like this is what I live my life doing. But like I try to practice what I preach as best I can. So we were mid-pandemic, and pandemic. Yeah, I did the air quotes. You guys get it. You guys get it.
Most of the people who follow are bears, so they get it.
They get it. Get it. But everything going on in the world, and I always tell parents, I say, you have to educate children for the world they are going to grow up in,
Right.
not the world you grew up in.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that world was the same and we just didn't understand it, but you understand what the world is. You have to educate children for that world.
Right.
Public school doesn't educate children for that world. It prepares them to be mentally and financially enslaved into that world,
Right.
more mentally than anything. So we were in the middle of this pandemic, and two monumental moments. I did find God before that, luckily. So I was very. There's something calming about God. Like you talked about looking inward. See now, I'm getting on a tangent. So you talk about looking inward.
Right.
Repentance. One of the best things I ever started to do was repent.
Mm-hmm.
Really repent every night. That doesn't mean go tell some pedophile priest.
Right.
What's, I did this or did that. No, it's looking inwards and examining. At the end of every day, I examine my actions of that day.
Right.
And I talk to God, and I question them. I say, was I doing that for myself? Was I doing that for someone else? Was I doing that for my ego? Did I do the right thing here? Why didn't I do the right thing here? And I pray for strength to do the right thing the next time that situation comes up.
Right.
And I pray for wisdom a lot, that I can figure out if I don't know what the right path is and what to do.
Right.
And there's something incredible about that type of self-examination, because whether it's happening from God or you're manifesting it through God, when you're praying for that strength, it's going to manifest, because next time you're in that situation, you think back, oh, I was praying for that strength, and I'm going to be weak here.
Right.
Right. I have to, now I've spoken to God. Now God, he knows I'm aware of it. So that strength will manifest.
Right.
So I just side tangent on repentance. I'm very passionate about repentance.
No worries, man.
I pray out loud with my son every night before bed, for that reason. And I repent, and because I'm trying to prompt him to think that way, but
Right.
he prays. It's adorable. But,
Awesome.
but yeah, so I mean, I looked at my wife in the middle of the pandemic. I said, let's have a baby. And because we were having a great time. And she was like, yep, no questions about it. And I don't want to say I'm batting 1,000, but it only took once.
Yeah, dude. If we're gonna be on that same boat, we're in the same boat.
Which, by the way, when we had our first baby, we weren't quite as along the path of a spiritual awakening yet.
Yeah.
And, my wife had been on birth control for 10 years from before I met her, and
Right.
I was drunk all the time, and it took us 18 months to get pregnant. And then the second time, it's just a one shot. So
Isn't that, it's so crazy how that works, man. And it really, to kind of go on that, dude, it's like, I have my theories. There's so much more to this, but I really do think when you're not in tune with self, God connection, it really is part of why a lot of people, it is complicated for people. Now, I understand there's more to it, but like anything else, physical pain that we experience with clients isn't just physical pain. There's emotional, mental, spiritual stresses that aren't being addressed across the board. Same thing with this. Was interesting real quick. A good close friend of ours, to my fiance, was like, oh, because she was talking about like with us, like maybe wanting to have kids. He's like, your envelope isn't fully opened, like internally, spiritually, or something, not spiritually, but like for her, like inwards of like self. And when she kind of like was like kind of accepted and came to that, and she felt ready, had a dream. I sent it to, I just talked about it with Big Bear once, and just like had this dream where I heard this beautiful music in the clouds. I see my son walking on the beach. We didn't have a son. And then I just knew, I was like, this is real. Like, this is a sign. And for me, like that really took me over the edge of like, oh, this God, God is real. God is there. And then obviously the first try, not even a month later, we find out, we're having our son. And it was just like, wow, when you're allowing yourself that openness in just talking about self, repenting, being like, look, I'm willing to make changes. Not an easy road. It's not like it happens overnight, but it really is like, I'm willing to do what it takes to be the best person I can be. For a lot of us, being in, following God, trying to, be like Jesus, not praise Jesus, but like do as he did, and really try to be the best person you can be. It really does. I see the same thing of like, wow, having children, complications, I'm not saying it's everybody. I understand it's not. It just, I have seen that there is some sort of, I don't want to say correlation, but there is it appears to be correlation. So
yeah, I remember the first time I saw my boy, I looked down, I was like, how don't you see the God in that?
Oh yeah, man. Just it's just talking about just you're talking about waves of emotion, right? Like for me, it was like when my son was born, it was like just the amount of happiness that makes you emotionally cry. I mean, I don't know what you did, but I just like bawled because it's like, and I've never cried because I was like that because I was happy. I didn't know what that feeling was. And it's so profound when you realize you're like, wow, that's just pure joy and love that just pours out of you. And it's like you admit it and you go, where was this in me? I never knew this was there. And talking about culture, growing up, maybe having, parents who weren't teaching you the life lessons, for a lot of kids, they don't know that feeling of just pure love and joy. And a lot of people, as we seem to like ourselves, is when you have children of your own, you go, oh, that's what that is. That unconditional love that, it's there with you as a child, but it gets lost in the fray of, all of the things of like having to go to school, having to do this, not, never maybe having parents around or whatever. So I think it's great to see people like yourself, who's not only in, like myself, in the community, the Bear community, of like, let's allow our children to experience that, and we experience it with them. Own up to our mistakes, own up to our, repent, allow ourselves to be, humans, in the sense of going, hey, I made mistakes, but how am I learning from this? Like anything else, everything is a was it everything is a test and a lessons learned. And it's just, I think it's a beautiful thing when you can start, like yourself, like going complete 180, it sounds like, with you and your wife.
Yeah, well, I mean, my advantage, because I don't want to paint an inaccurate picture.
Okay.
My advantage growing up was that I always had that I came from an incredibly close, loving, protected
Right.
family.
Same. Same.
Um, I always felt safe. I always felt loved. I was always encouraged. All these amazing things. Yeah, I know my parents, like I go on these podcasts. I'm like, oh man, they're going to listen and think I'm bashing them.
Yeah.
Not the case. Not the case. I just, as the education guy, I always think about what I do different. That's all. So,
Yeah, of course.
but yeah, so, getting back to like the culture and everything. So my wife and I decided to have a baby. And then like another month went by and I was like, all right, threw one crazy idea out. Here comes number two.
Yeah.
I looked at her, I said, I don't know, it might have been a month, 2 months, I don't know. But I looked at her, I said, we're going to sell the house and move down south.
And she's like, what?
3 years earlier, because I didn't know the problem with all this debt and stuff like that
Right.
when I was a little bit younger. But 3 years earlier, I was like, we're going to get a house.
Yeah.
We're going to go to the bank. We're going to get a loan. We're going to get a house. I'm going to crush. I was doing all that, but in mortgage debt. And so then I look at her 3.5 years later. We're going to sell this house.
Yeah.
But she was great about it. She was like, you think it's time? I was like, I think it's time.
Right. But that's great that you have that support and you have that community within, like you said, the nuclear community of like, hey, we have to make these decisions together. It's sacrifice. It's not always easy, but it's knowing, all right, like you said, if it's time, it's time. Like, let's do it, and we'll figure it out as we go. Because I think that's the hardest part for a lot of people, is the unknown, right?
It's the unknown is, I mean, you said you're going to Hawaii.
Yeah. So I mean, there's so much unknown, but at the same time, it's like anything else. It's like it's closer to, so some of her family, her good friends, and it's like, we want a life as well for our son, of like where he's having those types of people of community around. Also understanding like the message of the island and just the way it is there is like the aloha spirit and things like that. Like we want him to have that kind of mindset with, how he looks at it. Like one of the things that we talk a lot about is, around the holidays, of like making sure, like, instead of just doing like a turkey and Christmas, being like, why don't we make it a point to do the mornings where we go walk the beaches and clean up the garbage and do like those community things, and then we go open presents, or then we go do those things that we would normally do, but teaching the life lessons of going, these are great, but not everybody gets this. So, people also don't necessarily take care of the land that we're on. Let's give back to the land. Let's appreciate what we have. So these are things that we're already starting to try to get into a groove, and like, we're gonna do this, and then have him come along, and then hopefully he follows and starts to, again, why are we doing this? What's the point? And then being like, well, this is why we are able to do the other things. So this is what the purpose is. So that was one of the big things with us, even with all, what's going on. It's like, I think it's like, hey, sacrifices are going to need to be made. And this is one of them, but seeing the bigger picture of like, what is this going to be for the family? You realize like, okay, this is what we do. Like you said with your wife and your guys' move.
Yeah, it's like the type of things I think about. Like right away, my mind jumps to, it's like, all right, he's gonna be like 5 or 6 years old. You're gonna encourage him to make these flyers, and the
Right.
flyers are gonna say, um, "Citizens for a cleaner Hawaii,"
Right.
and it's gonna invite everyone to this beach at 9 o'clock on Saturday the 7th, and we're all gonna show up and clean the beach, and like, he'll have success doing something
Dude,
like that. Even
absolutely.
if 5 people show up, he'll have.
Absolutely, man. And that's the thing. And what you were saying about doing the small things now with him, of like the airplanes and the filming it and things, it's just getting in the rhythm of like, oh, this is what I do with my dad, or what I do with my mom and my dad. Right. And I think more than anything is, as you just said, is like doing the flyers. You don't realize the impact you have on people at all, or sometimes until later in life. What I mean by that is like, the more we do stuff like that, and you see parents maybe going, that you never meet, going, maybe I should start doing this with my kid. This is a great idea. Or why can't I do this? Because I think we are seeing more people wanting to do those things. And as we said earlier, kind of bringing it full circle, the creativity is lost in the parents a lot of times. So their minds can't comprehend maybe going to that and doing that until maybe something's already out there.
Yeah, I
But
mean, that's why I love doing this. Like, I love it, and I see the community of a lot of people, but like the Bears, and there's more communities. The Bears, the so I don't like the term, but for lack of a better term, the anti-vaccination
right,
mothers,
right,
um, all these people who are taking control of their children's education, and who, on varying different levels, see the world for what it is. And when I think of how we were educated, and so many of us, like, I was completely brainwashed by the time I had my bachelor's degree. I mean, I was just a walking, bumbling,
yeah,
indoctrinated idiot. And I had to deconstruct everything I learned, basically wipe the slate clean, and learn how the world really worked once I saw it. But now, I mean, we have a generation of children, a generation of bear children, and we're all having lots of children
right,
who are going to grow up understanding the world with a backbone in morality,
right,
and being educated in a way in which um, these children are going to be very capable.
right.
There's like tough times really do make tough people.
Mhm.
Um,
Totally, man. Dude, I think it's awesome, man. And I'm as crazy as the times are, I truly am excited and appreciative of being alive during it, because, as we've said, when you really do have God, there isn't the fear of death. It really isn't. So it's like, okay, well, what am I gonna do while I'm here in this vessel? And it's like, well, if you have children, if you have community, it's like, well, now what are we gonna do? And if you're a community based, as you said, of a backbone of morality, it's like, how do we just crush?
we're
How do
gonna
we just
crush.
exactly? And but that's the thing. It really does kind of, it's like the culmination of like, how would you describe this? It's like crushing. And here's the thing, man. We talked about it as we were before we got on. You start to see people bringing creativity in all different realms: drawing, music, woodwork, building, engineering, uh, satire, comedy, whatever the case is, videography. I mean, I know there's cooking, like there's a list of things that goes on. and you start to realize, you go, there's so much creativity always around us. And that's what really is what is the culmination of what we experience in life is creativity. When you see creative minds all then feeding off one another's energy in their own right, you start to see like the manifestation of the life you want for your family, for your community. It's so simple when you kind of think about it, but at the same time you get lost in the fray of, again, that I have to put my head down, I have to do this, I have to do that. And just real quick, I don't want to get too far off, but the other day I was just walking, I had a moment where some things were on my mind and it was causing not fear but concern. And it was more of like just going inward and going, all right, God, give me a sign. Like, what? I'm not scared, I'm really not scared, but what should I do? How do I get through maybe what's on my mind? Give me a sign. And as I'm walking my dog, I look up at one of the adjacent neighbor's window, and the window's open so I could see their TV. Literally after I asked the question, I look up and it says great art, but I thought it said create art just because of the way the TV was angled. And it just said create art, like create. And I have a tattoo on my right here. It's an ogum, and it says create. So it just was like just a simple reminder of like, oh, it's there and it's right here. Just keep creating. Just keep doing what you're doing in regards to just how you know how to be in this world is create the ideas, the seeds in your mind, whatever then it manifests into, you're doing it. This other stuff is just noise. Just keep doing what you're doing. That's kind of what I took away. And it just happened like that. And yeah, that was a long tangent, but anything you
No,
want to.
yeah. I mean, I see the people in the bear community and all of the things they're able to do. Like, there's this guy, Fishbone Glass. I don't know if you follow him.
I have not.
He basically takes broken glass and uses a flame. And I don't know if this is the proper word, but essentially he welds it back together or
Wow.
melts it back together, welds it back together. But he takes like the shattered glass and he puts together just these immaculate pieces that you would never know were broken. He makes things from scratch.
Wow.
I see the skills of the people in the bear community, and I think I'm retarded.
Dude, there's definitely times where I'm like, I need to start figuring more stuff out. But it is such an inspiration, would you say?
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And but that goes to show you it's like talking about the flyers, and maybe there's other people looking and being inspired, being like, I can do this with my kid, and maybe you have no idea. It's also at the same token someone looking at you in the bear community going like, wow, I wish I could do what Brett's been doing, or classical learner. Like, that's so creative, I can't even comprehend that. And you're looking at them going, I can't imagine doing what you're doing. And what happens? You start investing in interest. You start creating community with them. You start maybe asking, hey, can you teach me some stuff? Or, hey, can you explain this to me, how you do it? And then what transpires? Maybe they're doing the same thing with you, or maybe there's just back and forth. And now all of a sudden, children, your children, their children are starting going, hey, what's this book? Oh, this gentleman that I'm speaking to wrote this book. Or, oh, like I just the other day went to Mohawk Farmer Bear's farm and, saw the lay of the land, got fresh chicken, fresh eggs, fresh, beef. And then you start going like, I'm, seeing operations. It's not, it's kind of like where your food comes from. Where's your literature coming from? Where's your art coming from? Where's your woodwork coming from? And talking about community, I'm just now riffing here and I'm just preaching. But then you go, wow, there's so much more that comes from it than just being like, oh, I bought this somewhere. It's like someone made this with purpose and love and gratitude and care. And they genuinely wanted, they were trying to do their best when they were making it because they know who would ultimately be receiving it, right? So it's a full circle thing, essentially. But yeah, man. So I'm gonna have to wrap up here. But is there anything you want to end on? Dude, I could talk for hours, man. I'm loving this. We'll definitely do it again. But is there anything you want to kind of leave people with? before we head out?
Yeah, this is a blast. What are my closing statements? I don't know.
Well, anything in regards to just kind of if a parent who maybe's never heard of, classical learner, never maybe considered homeschooling, what would be just a message that you might leave them with of like something to consider?
There's a better way,
Okay.
that you have a vision for who you want your child to be. Everyone has a vision for who they want or think their child is going to be. And there is an undeniable amount of documented evidence that what is happening in public school is not producing that vision,
Hmm.
that people don't know how to think for themselves, that undeniably people don't have skills, that people don't have basic financial literacy, right? I mean, people can't balance a checkbook, let alone understand what a mortgage is, right? I had to learn that the hard way. Understand what an asset is versus a liability, right? An asset is something that brings money in on a monthly basis. But because the way our financial system is set up, everyone just has liabilities, right? We have payments, 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 right? Well, do you have any assets, right? That's right. Like my books are an example. This is it's an asset. You know, I could pass that to my child. He could, right? When I die, that'll be in my will that they could sell my books,
Right.
assets. So that there's a better way to educate children. And whether that's me, I love talks like this because, like I said, I, I almost feel like I project myself as this oh, that's classical learner. No, I'm a guy, and I'm very good at what I do, and I will definitely improve your child's education. Um, and I have a joy working with families. So if anyone wants to work with me, I'm game.
Awesome, man. Well, dude, we'll definitely have to chat more. I'd love to do this again. Maybe, if there's an avenue you want to take it in, things you want to talk about. I know I'm gonna have more questions once we get off here. So we'll definitely have to chime in again and dig down whatever we scoop up. So I appreciate your time, man. Thank you so much, dude. This was such a blast. And on that note, we'll see y'all again soon. All right, bye.